Welcome back to another episode of the Workplace Wanderer. I am one of your hosts, Blake Cohen, and I'm here with
Kara Kirby.
Hello, Kara. How are
Hello,
you?
Blake. I'm great.
Well, as always, our goal for this podcast is to share lessons from the experts on anything related to workplace dynamics. Today, though, as many of you know, if you've been listening, um, this is our third episode together, Kara and I's third episode together, co-hosting. So we're still in the process of getting to know each other. And last episode, she interviewed me, and I wanted to return the favor by interviewing her. Even though she's been a guest on the podcast before, we focused more on a topic then. So I want to get to know you, Kara, on a bit of a deeper level.
You're
How do
getting
you
back
feel?
at me is what you're doing, but I appreciate it, and it's gonna be fun.
It will be. It will be. It'll
Yeah.
be a good time. Where I don't have anything prepared for this. I just want to see where this goes and see where this takes us. However, before we start, I just wanted to I want to set a new precedent of doing a bit of a check-in. So, anything going on in your life since last week? You working on anything exciting?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I got a few things going on. I don't know if I can talk about them succinctly yet, but
Okay.
yeah, I have a few fun projects going on with some different organizations, just leadershipy, how to make the best ideas in the room kind of stuff. But I'll have more next time. What about yourself? Anything you want to update the listeners on?
Um, to be honest, I am just so deep in the weeds with this whole TED Talk thing. I mean, there's other stuff going on that's fun, cool, and exciting, and but really for me, that it's just this consumes my days and nights is preparing for this TED Talk. The TED is coming up in 22 days.
Wow.
Yeah. I feel really good about it at this point. I feel like it's to a place where I'm happy. I keep making little tweaks and there's a few little surprises throughout. So now I'm trying to practice those surprises, which are throwing me off because I got it
Mm,
memorized and now I'm adding the surprises in. And now when the surprises happen, I'm surprising myself a bit and like getting thrown off in the process. But it's so fun. And I know I have 3 more weeks to prep. So by the
yeah.
time by the time that's done, it'll be great.
You have a lot of people cheering you on. It's going to be good.
I'm excited.
I actually do. Now that I'm thinking about it, I do have one update. This isn't about work, but this is just about my personal. I'm always reading and I'm always trying to learn new things. But the past couple years, I've been on this journey to really understand every manipulation tactic that is out there, which I know
Mhm.
sounds really weird. But I also think that if you're a facilitator and you're in the personal development or leadership development space, it is incumbent upon us to understand how human beings are manipulated so that we make sure that we don't do those things to
Yeah.
anybody else, because you're in such a position of power, especially as a facilitator or working with leaders in an organization. So when I get hyper focused on a topic, I read basically every book I could find. And I just finished the book Influence, which took me, I'm a pretty fast reader, so I usually get through books really fast, but this one was just filled with case studies and just all these nuggets of information I really needed to digest. And
Yeah.
it's a long book too. So it took me a while. So it's been kind of an arduous process of getting through this and being like, all right, how can I help people with this? How does this work in the real world? And I not only am done with that book finally, so I'm going to start creating some content on it, but I feel like I'm able to close this chapter. Like, I feel like I have a good hold on every manipulation tactic that is out there. Like, I'm educated to the point that I want to be now. And that feels really nice.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I know this has been a bit of a journey for you. And I also, one of the reasons I was so drawn to your Instagram and your social media was because you are constantly posting about this stuff and you're educating. I love how you take what you're learning and you educate everybody else on it. And you so
Yeah.
quickly turn it around and share content with people that's so valuable and interesting to me. So I appreciate that. And if anybody's listening, I definitely suggest to go follow Kara because there's some really good nuggets almost every day that's posted.
Awesome. Yeah.
On a personal note too, there was something I thought of this week that I figured was going to make you laugh. I don't know why I thought this would make you laugh. Just a glimpse into how my mind works sometimes as a psychopath. Um, and I know the more stressed out I get, I'm pretty easygoing and relaxed. But the more stressed out I get, the more things that annoy me. And this week I was updating, and this is what's going to make you laugh, is I keep a running list in my phone of things that annoy me.
Oh, good.
And I don't know why I do this, but as I was updating the list, I was like, I feel like Kara would find this so funny that I just have a list that I created for no
Just
reason.
that you have a list. No, that is funny. I thought you were about to tell me an instant. I was like waiting for it. No, I think okay, proceed. Do you have anything more to say on that?
No, I'm happy to share some of the list with you. And I think they're
Okay,
all reasonable.
I would like to hear a few things, but then I have something to say about making that list.
Okay. All right. I'll start from the beginning. Things falling out of my pocket. I just hate when they fall out of my pocket. Cats meowing for no reason. People who say like a lot. I
Mm,
watch those reality shows and there's when they're having conversations like Love is Blind, every other word is like, and
yeah.
I can't even watch it.
That's very boomer of you, Blake.
Is it? Oh
Yeah.
God. Um, a lot of people call me Grandpa Blake for a reason. This one I think is reasonable. Bathroom paper towel dispensers that just dispense short amounts of paper towels. That really bothers me. Like, what's the point? Because you end up having to pull multiple. I don't get it.
Yeah.
You can't dry your hands. People who clap when the plane lands. A lot of this is
Oh,
travel
that's
related.
me. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm people's travel nightmare.
Are you?
Yeah, because
Because you have it down.
I'm a plane talker.
Oh man, me
I
too.
know.
Me
Okay.
too. Oh, I have learned to pick up the cues and be like, this person doesn't want to talk to me.
Yeah, but what if they're reading a book that you've read, like, and you're going to be on the flight for 4 hours? I'm sorry, I'm done. Like,
Oh, it's hard.
we're gonna have to become friends,
Yeah.
that friendship's going to last a long time. But that's your fault, I guess. I don't know. I can't help it.
Also, if they have a small child and they're seated near me,
Oh, playing with it.
yeah, the whole
Yeah, give me
time,
that
like
kid.
making faces and throwing things, and like I totally rile them
Yeah.
up. So people who don't wait for their group to be called when boarding a plane also makes me
Mm,
nuts. Really good shows making me wait a week for the next episode, and that was inspired by
mm.
traders
There's a
because
lot
I
of patience related things on this list.
well, yes, you're right. We've been spoiled by Netflix where they release a full season all at once.
Yeah.
And so then having to wait a week just makes me nuts now. Um, People who are assholes and they're proud of it and they like to say stuff
Mm,
like, I am who I am, take it or leave it. That makes me crazy. You're just an asshole. It doesn't
yeah.
like you can change. I hate getting gas for my car. Um, people are beaded doorways. I hate when people hang up beads on their doorways. That makes me nuts. People who, oh, let's see, what this one I wrote that made me laugh. What takes so long to get off the plane? Just walk. That one. And then when people say this is whatever their age is on social media posts, like when they have a birthday and they turn like
Oh,
38 and they're like, this is 38. I hate that.
okay. All right. Good things to keep in mind. See, this is all part of the process.
Yeah. I think these things bother me on varying basis depending on my
I think you're just
emotional state.
observing. I think you're just observing life.
Yeah, maybe, but
I think it's
they're
a good practice, right? It's like you're like are you're it's a way of learning yourself, I guess is the optimistic way of saying.
I think the goal of it would be to point it out and go, "Oh, this is annoying me. I should expect this. This is what people do." But instead,
Yeah.
it triggers like, "Oh, I wrote that down last week. I hate you as a person," which I don't actually do. I don't actually hate
Yeah.
them. But anyway, you were going to say something about creating lists like this.
Oh, no. So one of my life coaches always says that you should have four journals and like written journals. And it's a good idea in practice, but I don't think anyone ever does it. But I like the idea, but you should have a purge journal. So I don't know if I'm gonna remember them, but it's like a manifestation, a purge journal, just like an everyday life, like writing down observations. But it's but that I don't know if annoyances would be purges. I think purges are more of like when those really hard things happen to you and you have a lot of dark thoughts, like getting those on paper is really
Hmm.
healthy.
Yeah.
But anyways, you're doing a form of journaling. So even, I mean, it's funny, but it's actually a healthy practice what you're doing.
I can tell that you'd make a great coach because
Uh,
you had a way to spin that and turn that into like, oh, you actually are doing something positive. When thought I was doing something crazy, you actually made me feel better about it. So just
well,
throwing that out there.
what is life but observe, like, I mean, that it's like, but consciously observing like how you operate in the day. Like that's growth no matter what you're doing. So like
Right.
let's say you have a moment now where where you get a short paper towel or whatever at a bathroom, and you're like, interesting, like I'm getting triggered by this, but that could also be an opportunity to step back and say, I don't have to be, like, how funny that this is my impulse reaction to get triggered by this. Why is that? Maybe this is a chance for me to like take a deep, I don't know, I'm not a coach, but I think about that a lot in myself. Like I'm always paying attention to the things that like annoy me, and I'm probably too much introspective of like, why is that? Like, where does that come from? Can I change that about myself?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's something to look at. I mean, all of that stuff is
it's
somewhere
exhausting.
deeply rooted in our brains. Yeah, it is exhausting. It's somewhere deeply rooted in our brains, and there's something that's happened to us at some point that creates all of this stuff. A lot of times, like you said, it's about patience. It's for
Yeah.
me, or maybe about control, or
See.
wanting common sense to be more common,
Yeah.
um, or maybe self-importance. I don't know.
And
Yeah,
I
who
think
knows?
that I actually think of what you said about control is like, that's a lot. Like, that's, I mean, that's part of the human experience is like, why am I so attached to control? And is that causing a fight or flight reaction in me? And I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways. All right. All right. Enough.
All right.
Life coach Kara is done for today.
Let's
I'm
get
gonna
into real
Can I
Kara.
tell you something though? I This past year I've had a lot of vertigo issues,
Hmm.
and which, if anybody's ever had that before, it's just so debilitating. I had
Yeah.
a girl on my team that had it, and it's like one of those things that I there's no way I could have given her enough empathy knowing what I know now
Hmm.
at that time, right? And then so I had that, and then also I've been a runner my whole life, and I a part of my back was fractured, and
Oof.
so all and so I stopped doing high impact sports and I stopped running. So my back is feeling good. And I just had a wisdom tooth taken out. So like my vertigo is gone. So I'm in a very happy place mentally because nothing on me hurts in the moment.
Wow.
So you're gonna like I'm like hyper optimistic about life. I was like in yoga class on Sunday and I was like, oh my God, everything is okay. I can put
Amazing.
I can put my head back and nothing's spinning. This is wonderful. So,
I think we take for granted being physically able. And when we
oh
have something that happens to us that disables us in any way, temporarily or permanently, it really puts things in perspective for us when we start to come out of that and heal. We realize how grateful we have to be for these bodies that we have because
yeah.
it's hard to adjust to life when something happens like that.
Yeah. And vertigo is like I mean, you have tiny little crystals that are in your ear. And if they get out of place at all, you cannot do anything. It
Wow.
is it's like, talk about control. Like it takes every control. It's wild. Ugh, ugh.
Well,
It's
and like you
gone.
said,
It's
it's
done.
one of those like invisible illnesses
Yeah.
where it's hard to understand unless you're experiencing or you have experienced it. It's people are just like, what do you mean you can't stand up? What do you mean the room is spinning? How is that
Ugh,
possible?
ugh.
It's really really debilitating. So I'm glad
Yeah.
you're on the other end of that. That's
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you. Same.
Well, Kara, let's get into some carrot talk. It's carrot
All
time.
right. All right. All right.
Where were you born?
I was born in Huntsville, Texas.
In
It's a
Texas.
town. Yeah, it's a town outside of Houston.
Okay. And did you stay home for college or did you end up moving away for college?
I went to college at a school called Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas, and then I left Texas pretty soon after that. I went and taught
Okay.
English in Mexico for a little bit, and then I got a job, and it moved me to the East Coast.
You taught English in Mexico post college?
Yeah,
What inspired that?
I had this big dream of I love traveling, so I just I had a um I had this vision of what my life was going to be, and it was going to be in all these different countries. I was going to have all these jobs and all these adventures and teaching kids English. And this fantasy was all spelled out in my mind of what it was going to look like.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
about the reality of going to Mexico and teaching kids was so different from the image that you've created?
I I actually write about this a lot is that when we have to confront these fantasies we make up with ourselves, and part of my personality and also kind of having a dysfunctional family, like one of
Mm.
the coping mechanisms is to live in the future. So, like, if anything, especially in my young, early 20s mind, if anything was stressing me out, I would just be like, oh, well, and I would do this as a child too. Oh, in the future, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So like I created these fantasies as a way of coping with anxiety. And then when I was like actually going out and doing them, it wasn't as fantastical as I had imagined. And so I had to I don't know, reconcile with that fantasy and figure out something else. And also you can't go live that life. I've always paid for everything myself, right? So I think if you're going to go live that life, you have parents that can kind of fund you on the back end a little bit, or you have it
Yeah.
figured out, but you can't, it's hard to do if you are doing everything on your own.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you don't make as much money as
Yeah.
you think you would, especially going to Mexico. You're going to be paid a lot less, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
I always call those with clients that I worked with that I get stuck in that future thinking. It's the
Mm-hmm.
if I could just, if I could just
Mm-hmm.
do this, if I could just get here, if I can just move there, if I can just meet the right person, that'll fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it usually requires us to look inwards and say, okay, I have to challenge my thoughts right here. Where am I right now? And what can I do about my situation right now? And what do I have
Mm-hmm.
to be grateful for? What are the gifts I have in my life? What are the things holding me back? What are my deficits? And really look at ourselves in the moment instead of going into that fantasy land.
And I think too, what I see, and I saw this with motherhood because when I was a child, I had it so spelled out in my mind what motherhood was going to look like.
Mhm.
And then when I had my kids, obviously I wasn't a child anymore, but I had this battle inside of me of like what little Kara wanted for to be as a mom in the relationship with her kids and like
Mm.
who I was as an adult, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does make sense. It reminds me of like the whole social media complex of we compare ourselves to people on social media because we see glimpses of this perfect life, but the
Mm-hmm.
reality is there's so much hardship in between and pain and challenges in between every post. And it's sort of like that. We all want to live that life of I
Mm-hmm.
want to live the beautiful mom life. I want to, it's going to be so much fun. And then you forget that there's screaming, there's crying, there's diaper changes, there's challenges, there's worry, there's fear. We forget about the pain that goes on behind the scenes.
Totally.
But that's very normal, I think, especially in your early 20s, right? I mean, I do think, and tell me if I'm wrong, did it help? Did it teach you a valuable life lesson to be able to go and do that for a little while in your early 20s? Did you feel like you took something away from that?
Yeah, definitely. I realized I don't like teaching children. And I know that that sounds bad. And then I realized I really like teaching adults. Because I like having, and maybe I would have been fine with high school kids, but I always thought I was going to be a teacher. And so I went down there and I was teaching these kids and like I didn't like it. and that was interesting. But I really liked like the creative part of having a piece of a curricula and turning it into an activity. Like I like,
Mhm.
and I still love that to this day, is going
Yeah.
and researching a creative way to deliver material. So that was like the big learning in that moment, was
Okay.
like I needed to be able to be financially secure on my own, and I also did not want to teach kids. So
Okay.
but that it was for a few months. It was still a pretty impactful experience, but it wasn't that long.
Yeah. Well, regardless though, it sounds like there was some things you pulled from it and
Yeah.
you got some more cultural experience, another culture. So I'm sure that that was valuable.
And I did it like I'm a very big advocate. One day I'll do something with this, but we do not teach college kids enough about the grief cycle and about change.
Hmm.
And like if I have a nanny or I have anybody, I'm like, hey, I'm going to give you some unsolicited advice. You are going to graduate, and no one's going to tell you that you're going to get depressed and that like you're going to have this event, and everyone's been telling you your whole life that all these amazing things are going to happen right afterwards, but you're not going to have a job with purpose. You might not find a job right away. You're going to be like, you're going to have all these changes all at the same time. And that's very, very unsettling to the human experience. So, um, so I keep that in the back of my mind too, of like how unsettled I was at that point in
Yeah.
my life, and how we don't help kids at that stage. Like we need to
Yeah.
have more realistic conversations with them
I
because
love
it's
how you're
hard.
calling them kids too, though. I mean, they are at that point. And the
Oh my God.
expectation that society has that you're supposed to choose your life trajectory at
So
between 18
dumb.
and 22 and then go live that life. It's a fantasy that they're being sold on.
Yeah.
I think school's great. I think college is really important. Uh, go do it, then go experience life for 10 years. And then if you want more schooling, go for it after that. But I think you need to go live life and figure yourself out a lot more, or we should be preparing them to figure out who they are while in their bachelor's in those years, figuring
Yeah.
out, looking for ways. And whether you go to school or not, there should be some type of curriculum that young adults go through to learn their core identity and to how to figure that stuff out step by step.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you came back from Mexico and went where?
I moved to Houston, and I worked at some crazy company for like a minute, and then my buddy, my good friend, was working with this company. It was a tire company, and they were hiring kids right out of college to go be trainers in car dealerships. So he was like, Kara, we get a car and we get a projector. This job is sweet. And I was
We
like,
get
I'm
a
in.
projector. Amazing. That's the dream.
You're gonna make like this amount of money. And I was like, oh my God.
Hmm.
And so it was really fun. So they moved us all up to Cleveland, and I tell this story a lot because it was such genius organizational design. They did an analysis of their sales team and realized that these really highly paid salespeople were spending a vast majority of their time training car dealerships. So this was 20 years ago. So car dealerships they just didn't sell tires because they were big, bulky items that had a low margin. So they didn't want anything to do with them. So this company started the idea of getting car dealerships in the tire business. So it was all change management. And I realized this later because I was getting my degree while I was there. And so they did this analysis, realized they were spending all this time doing this training, but they wanted them to be doing selling. So they said, why don't we take this chunk of their job and hire these kids out of college that are smart, make them memorize a presentation, and put them out in the field and go do all of the education work.
Yeah.
So that's what they did. We memorized
Smart.
52 pages worth of tire presentations. I still have it memorized to this day.
I was going to ask you.
And yeah, and I had, my territory was the Southeast. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. I didn't know a soul. And I had to like go out by myself. I was like this super extroverted. I knew everyone in my college. I didn't go out without like 900 people around me at all times. And I moved away and I didn't know
Wow.
anybody. It was wild. And yeah,
Now
so I had all,
that takes some mental fortitude and resilience and a lot of that's not an easy thing to do. what was that culture shock like of going to an unknown place? I mean, you went from south to south, but two very different souths.
No, not South. I tell I did not. I didn't. First of all, I didn't even know Charlotte was a city, because Texas only teaches Texas history, basically. Like I had never heard of it before, and like their South, like the whole like genteel. My
Mhm.
this first guy I went on a date with. This is one of my favorite stories. We were sitting down at dinner, and I like dropped an F bomb, and he was like, "Kara, I do not like when pretty girls say ugly things."
Oh
I
my
was
God.
like, what? Because
That's a
Texans are
live and
different.
breathe.
I was like, oh my God. He was a caricature of a Southern guy, though. I did because Texans are different. They're like crass and outdoorsy, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Texas is just its own different beast. And yeah, so I don't know what I was. I don't think I even knew what I was getting myself into. I was just like, I'm going on an adventure. La la la.
And then how long were you there for?
I was there for 8 years.
Oh my gosh.
So, but the company was growing really fast and they were so progressive when it came to their people policies. So they just did all these cool things. And I remember one day they were teaching everybody DISC, and I realized there was this connection of psychology and business. And I
Mm.
was just hooked from that point forward. And I went and immediately enrolled myself in a master's program of organizational development. And I had to write my first essay on leadership. And I was like, I don't even know what this word means, it was a whole world, but I just found it just like absolutely fascinating. And they were at the point where they were growing so rapidly, and I was a hard worker and I'm smart, so they were like, you can just basically do whatever you want. So I went into sales, and then I went and I was teaching sales, and I did like a different job every single year.
Wow.
And
But within
yeah,
the same company.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we had a lot of
Wow.
fun.
I was going to ask you when that connection started of the combining the organizational behavior with the psychology or like the business side with psychology. So it sounds like they were really smart about introducing that stuff. How do you think that they got their hands on that? Do you know where that was coming from
Yeah,
for them?
definitely. So they're based out of Cleveland. So they're in the backyard of Case Western. So Case Western has a positive organizational development, like big community. David Cooper Ryder, who did appreciative inquiries right out of
Hmm.
there. So they would partner with Case Western and do all sorts of projects. So we would have like full appreciative inquiry summits. And I was so naive that I thought that that's how the world worked. Like I thought everybody was like dealer tire.
Yeah.
And I would be in my classes, and I was still learning. I was like 23 years old, and they'd be like, so does your company do this? And I was like, yeah. They're like, does it do this? I'd be the only one with my hand raised. Meanwhile, everybody else in the class was having all these toxic, really like horrendous experiences in their work. I'm over here. I don't know anything about business, but I'm in a really positive, productive business. So it was like that was my first clue that my experience was not like the rest.
Yeah. What do you think serves as a better learning example? Going through a toxic situation and knowing what not to do? Or do you think your type of situation
That's a good
uh,
question.
sticks better?
I'm so happy I had a positive experience. I think you learn a lot from both. I don't think a lot of people have a positive work experience.
Hmm.
It's so wonder. Now I have seen a glimpse at the other side. I I cherish the fact that I had a positive experience so much more. And by the way, I not only had a positive experience at one company, I had it at another. So like I was so lucky.
Yeah.
Um, but you do learn a lot from the negative situations too, of like what not to do. It's kind of
Right.
like if you have like parents that like know how to have healthy conversations and they're really emotionally intelligent, whatever that is like, you know, like I don't know if kids like if you grow up with that, if you're like, okay, I know these capabilities that I'm going to bring forward, I'm learning from it. If or if you're in the opposite situation where you're learning what not to do, I don't know. So
I guess it really depends on you as a person too, right? Because you could fall into the toxic behaviors and sort of attain some learned helplessness and just think that
mm-hmm.
this is how it is. And so
Yeah,
I'm going to just match the behavior and I'm going to become toxic too. Or do you look at this and go, I don't agree with this. So maybe that's where that and maybe a sense of confidence or self-esteem comes in or self-respect of saying this is not
totally.
something that I could stand up for or ethics, values, learning those things is so important so that you can say, okay, this is what I don't like and I don't want to be in this environment anymore if I have the opportunity to leave.
And I think what you just said is totally like, I think a lot of times people do not understand how bad their environment is because they've never experienced a good environment.
Hmm.
One of my friends actually has this quote I use all the time is that once you've experienced a good working environment, it's really difficult to go back.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Um,
Or a good leader, right?
yeah. And it's also there's a bit of a catch-all. So I imagine maybe you experienced some of this as well too as you went through schooling and started educating yourself as well on leadership and org psych and organizational behavior. But I imagine the more you learned, the more you started noticing
Oh,
behaviors that maybe shouldn't be happening. So they become louder to people who are
well,
educated on this.
they absolutely become louder. And my another really invaluable experience that I had was I was in a science experiment. So I was inside of six or five, six car dealerships every single day. So if you think about this from a science perspective, car dealerships are all doing the same business. It doesn't matter if it's a BMW, Mercedes, Honda, they're all doing the same thing, right?
Mhm.
And there's some dealerships that really excel and there's some dealerships that cannot figure it out. And it all comes down to people. And I would get to a point where I was learning these things and I would see them in action in the car dealerships. And I would say, I could actually start feeling it from the parking lot of like this car dealership's one that's successful and this one is not because it would be all about how they treated their people. That would be
Wow.
the determinant of if they were successful or not.
Did you end up having conversations going into these car dealerships? Would you ever bring up any of the knowledge that you had
No,
or point anything out?
no, because you have to be, oh, that sounds bad. You have to meet people where they are, right? And a lot of times people get intimidated by higher education.
Hmm.
And so I couldn't march in there and be like, let me tell you what I'm learning in my master's program and this research like they don't want to hear that stuff.
Sure.
But I, and I do this to this day is that I will bring in elements without necessarily talking about the science behind it. So I did a lot of design thinking workshops with the
Hmm.
dealerships and I wouldn't be like, hey, we're going to bring in the whole system because this is how change management works. You can't go in here and change a process just by telling people what to do. You have to involve, I wouldn't do it like that. I'd be like, hey, Craig, can I try something tonight? I'll buy you guys pizza.
Yeah, right. You
And then
have
I'd
to
bring
kind of,
it, yeah, I'd bring in my flip charts and I'd be like, hey, how do you guys think y'all could sell more tires? And all of a sudden, because just because you don't have a lot of people with high education, you have really, really brilliant people that are out there, especially the guys and gals fixing cars. Like I would be doing training classes and I would say one thing and they would be like, it was
yeah.
so cool. Yeah. I mean, such intelligent people in the car business. But so all of a sudden they were like engaged in the problem solving and they would come up with this whole business model and then they would go out and do it. And
Wow.
so like my sales like went crazy because I was using all of these practices that I had learned and introducing them in a certain way.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really fun.
Yeah, I always think about that. I think the one thing that higher education sometimes, and I'm very lucky to be in a program that's very different than this, but a lot of times higher education doesn't prepare you for reality. So they give you like a playbook of how
Oh
you'd go
yeah.
in and approach a situation where it's like, Hi, I'm introducing change management, or I'm introducing appreciative inquiry. And this appreciative inquiry, what this will do, and you think people are going to respond to that and they're just going to fall asleep while you're talking to them
Yeah.
because they're not the same type of nerd as us. We are
Mm-hmm.
nerding out on this stuff. I want to know every detail, but most people don't. Just like if someone told me how to fix an engine, I'm going to be like, please stop. I don't care. Um,
And
but
and the science you speak to that's neuroplasticity, right? Like we learn by attaching to other learning. If you've never learned any of this stuff before, why I can't come in here I'm like 9 miles down the road and expect you to understand what I'm talking about. Like
right.
that's just not how it works.
Well, I think it's common though, people in certain higher education, it's you want to almost flex your knowledge. There's a bit
You
of
want to
ego there.
gatekeep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to like show you how much I know so you can be impressed by me. And I've had to pull that back and
Mm-hmm.
realizing that I don't know if that's why I was doing it, but it was a
Insecurity.
well, excuse me.
I'm
No,
sorry.
no,
Sorry.
no,
I,
no, no, no. There's some of that there, I'm sure, but it was also,
not you, not you, everybody else. Okay. Let me
oh
be
God, yeah,
clear.
yeah, of course, I'm special. No, I think for me, I misunderstood to an extent of how interested people would be in the nitty gritty. And
That's a good way of saying it.
instead it's just like, tell me how to do it. So if you're
Hmm.
going to tell me how to fix an engine, don't explain to me how every part of the engine works. Just show me what the steps are,
Yeah,
you know?
we don't teach practitioner sales,
Right.
which and I mean, even in teaching sales, like there's an expression called feature dumping. And so if you can get salespeople to just stop feature dumping and listen to what the problem is and help the customer figure it out for themselves and give them a solution, like that process, even with salespeople, you have to keep telling them over and over again. Like imagine you have a population of very educated people that have never even heard the first thing about sales or consulting. Like
Right.
of course they're gonna fumble.
Right. Right. I also, by the way, and I don't want to get too sidetracked. I want to get back to your story in a second.
Okay.
I also think, though, this is also why academics love academics
Mm-hmm.
because they can get deep in the weeds and have these
Oh,
conversations. And I think you do need those circles to also be into these high level conversations. But
oh
also, you
my
have to
God, it's the
realize,
best when you
yeah,
don't have to, you can just like say whatever weird shit book, all research on. Oh, it's the best. It's so
oh God,
freeing.
I
Of
love
course,
it.
they only want to be there?
Yeah, I love it. But I do think, like you said, what you described is a really smart way of going about it. If you're getting in through the back door, you're applying what you know in a reality-based way that actually applies to what the people need that you're meeting with. You're meeting them where they're at, which I think is like 101 of this whole thing. You really need to be able to do that. And finding a way to get in through the back door and engaging them in a process of change.
Yeah.
So really cool. So then after all of this, and I know you worked for another job as well, right? Did you move to
Mm-hmm.
Florida?
No, but Ultimate Software was out of Weston, Florida, right
Right. Okay,
outside
that's
of
right.
Fort Lauderdale. Yeah.
Okay, so then you started working for another company.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm curious is where does the bridge happen of going, okay, so I'm working for other people. What I really love and really want to challenge myself with is going out now and helping other organizations with my own practice. Was that a slow process where you started doing it on the side, or did you start?
No.
No, you just dove all the way in.
Well, I was in a situation, I was in a really special situation at Ultimate where our team was doing all the leadership workshops. So we were building all this stuff and we were in every single conference. So
Hmm.
we just we knew everybody and we had all these, and that organization was just so fun to work at, like such awesome people. The leadership was wonderful. Like we had, like I would have worked there till the day I died if it would have stayed intact. Like
Wow.
and literally everyone would have. Their employee and customer retention numbers were at 98%.
Wow.
Like
Unheard of.
it was just a dream. It was just a dream company to work for. Um, but I did always have this thing in the back of my mind of, because because I was doing leadership development work, we were hiring people from the outside. And I would do that at Dealer Tire too. And I'd be like, all right, so people's whole jobs is just going off and doing, I wonder what that would look like if I did that. Maybe one day I'll try. So I always had it in the back of my mind, but then Ultimate was bought by private equity and then they went through a merger process. And um, yeah, I was like, okay, this is my sign.
Wow. So what do those first days look like of the first 6 months of starting your own practice? I mean, how did you start going about getting business and who did you reach out to? Like what, and how did you even figure out what services you wanted to provide?
Again, I was in a special situation because everyone knew me at my last company. And so our leadership program was awesome. And so I, at the same time that this acquisition and merger, whatever was all happening, everybody left. So it was like all my friends went and worked at new companies. So I had a very easier transition than a lot of people because
Yeah,
that's not normal, you know.
right.
So I had all of my buddies at these other companies. So I already had my foot in the door because my friends were there, which I
Okay.
will always say because I'm so extroverted, I spent every single one of my lunches in detention because I could never shut up in class. And every single report card, people would write something of like, she doesn't ever shut up. Like my entire life, I was getting yelled at for making friends and talking too much. And it's just you should not do that to kids. There needs to be a message that this is going to be what helps you build a business. This is a qualities that make you good at sales, you know, like it. I always think that's so interesting is like this thing I had about myself that everyone told me was like broken and there was something wrong with me ended up being the thing that allowed me to like go into business for myself.
I mean, talking my
I know.
language now. This is told you I'm deep in the weeds in the TED Talk and I do bring that up. I think you've
Yeah.
heard it. So like I do bring
Yeah.
that up that for a while I lost who I was because of how school kept punishing me for harmlessly goofing around. And I wasn't bad. I wasn't disrupting people. I was just having a good time while also learning.
Yeah.
And they hated that.
Oh my
And so I
God.
was punished.
Hated me
I was in internal suspension constantly.
constantly.
And sometimes I deserved it, but but most part, I was trying to figure out the boundaries there.
Oh
I'll
God.
never forget.
And I'm a little bit of a rebel. So it would be like I have kind of a problem with authority. Yeah, it was not good.
Yeah. I think there's a reason you and I get along. I think there's very similar high school experiences, it sounds like middle school and high school.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I remember once being kicked out of English class again, just for goofing around a little bit, really doing nothing wrong, and that made me mad. So then
Mm.
the teacher told me, "Get out of here, Blake. Go to suspension. Your zeros are adding up." And I remember, I don't even know how I came up with it so quickly. I'm like, "That's weird because zeros don't add up." And the whole room busted out laughing, and even the teacher started laughing. And I felt so good walking out, but like it was just such a silly thing. Like, just let me sit down and learn. I don't have
Yeah.
a great attention span, but
Wait, do you have
I,
ADHD?
I don't know.
You
Maybe it
don't
runs in
know.
my family, but I don't
Okay.
think severe enough to detract me. The signs are there, but I don't think it's severe enough to pull away from what I'm doing. Do I listen to loud music while I read? Yes. Does that help me
Yeah.
focus? Yes.
Um, yeah.
You
Anyway,
know,
I think about that a lot with like ADHD kids because now have this like very hyperactive little boy and I don't want him to have the same experiences I did in school, right? But
right.
I don't know. It's parenting is hard.
Yeah. How do you balance? Well, this may be a conversation for another time, but I was just going to ask, how do you balance what the school system says and obviously feeling the need to support that so they excel within the system that we have versus also praising them and letting them do their thing and
Yeah.
building up their confidence in the process as well.
And like yes, like that's it. That's the struggle right there. Cause like I mean, my parents again are hippies. Like they would never put me on medication. And like it's so funny because like now all these women are like, because ADHD in girls just shows up, it just shows up as hyper intelligence, right? And so like if you're making all A's, they're going to be like, oh, there's nothing wrong with that little girl. And so it's like now millennial women are starting to realize like, oh, I've had ADHD my entire life. Like I was not that girl. Like people knew the moment I came out of the womb that I was like
Everybody, and they're like, this
I'm
one's a
like,
wild
oh,
child.
you're just learning that at 40. That's cool. You know?
Wow.
But yeah, I do. I think about that with my son. And oh, what I was gonna say is like, I'm like, just let him just like move his body. Like he just needs to, he's just like a ball of energy. Like, and I'll do that with him in the mornings. Like we'll go, like I'll like we let him run to the stop sign, you know, like I'll do, I'm just like, he just needs to move his body and then he'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that that's really great,
Yeah, I
and
don't know.
even prepping teachers are like, yeah, he's going to have to stand up every once in a while.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I
They're
used to
no, they're
drive.
good. They're better now though. Like it's so,
Yeah.
and like they have little bouncy seats and like even fidgets. Oh my
Oh,
God. If
yeah.
you
I
could have
wish we
just
had all
given me a
that.
fidget or
Seriously.
just something, I would have been okay.
What I never made it through a single class without getting up to go to the bathroom. And it
Oh
wasn't, I
no.
didn't even have to go. I would just go walk for a bit and then come back. And that lasts actually until now. Like I still, when I have to go sit in a classroom, you've got me for 30 minutes before I need to take a 5-minute break and go
Yeah,
walk
same.
around. And it's bad. Or I stand up in the back of the class and I kind of just like pace back and forth, and
Hmm.
it can be distracting to other people, but I can't do it. So, all right. So you now working in this. So how long have you had your company?
For 4 years.
4 years.
In
And
April. Coming up on 4 years.
that's pretty close. It's pretty close. That's exciting.
I know.
That's
I have a
exciting.
tree. I have a tree I planted, and it's kind of fun because it blooms like at the same time every year, and it gets
Wow.
bigger.
You
Such a
planted
little.
it,
It's such a
you went,
metaphor.
you planted it when you started the
Hmm.
company? That's wow. That's so symbolic.
I
Amazing to watch it
know.
grow
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
cool.
And if like the tree doesn't give up, I can't give up. I'm gonna keep
Yeah,
going.
right.
I'll keep blooming every year. So have you found in owning your own company, and you have team members too, right? You have people who work with you?
Yes. Yeah.
Great. So in the beginning, I imagine it was just you, right?
It's still kind of just me. I just have a network of people I do stuff with.
Okay.
So,
Like
and
your
and
preferred providers.
yes, absolutely.
Okay. So when you're doing this work now and you've been doing it for 4 years and you're on your own, what do you feel like is the moment that you come alive? What is like the job that you get, or those moments where you're like, I love this. This is so much fun. I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
You know, I ask myself that question like every day, and it changes, you
Mhm.
know, like I've been a facilitator for 20 years. So facilitation is something that people generally do like as a second career, or they'll like figure out that they're good at it. But my first job out of college, I was going and delivering presentations 2 to 3 times a day, like working with a group of people every single day. So I've been
Wow.
doing this work of working with humans and working a room and helping people learn together for a very long time. So like that is the place I'm most comfortable with. But I think as I get older, I I mean, if it could pay the bills, because my facilitation is absolutely my business, right? But
Yeah.
if it could pay my bills, I would just work with people and like help them do their stuff. You know, like
Right.
I like the spotlight less and less as I get older. Like
Okay.
I've never actually been as like big of a personality as I am. I don't like being the center of attention, you know, and I'm totally comfortable on a stage, but like I could take it or leave it, even though it's my bread and butter because it's what I've been doing for so long.
Okay. I think that makes sense. Over
Does it
time,
make
it's
sense? Yeah.
yeah, no, I think it does make sense. And like over time, you kind of want to get what I love about facilitating or presenting or speaking is that you can get really high level on a topic and you can
Mm-hmm.
influence a lot of people. It's like a quantity game, right? But then I think maybe eventually, and tell me if I'm wrong, maybe this is what's happening for you. Eventually, you start wanting to go, let's go deeper into these topics. I
Mm-hmm.
want to get into the weeds with you. I want to figure out the nitty gritty and work with you on these specific topics and help move you through the process I'm presenting on, I'm
Yeah.
facilitating on.
I don't know. So I'm still figuring it out. And you know what I've also realized is I also just kind of like running a business. Like I
Do
like
you?
that. Like I like doing the things people don't like to do. I like networking. I like connecting people. I like I like marketing, you know? Like
Hmm.
it's yeah, it's just I don't know. There's a lot of things. It's
What
a
is there
good
one?
being an entrepreneur is a good thing for a multi-passion person. I'll say that.
Yeah, right. It's true because there's always something. You never
There's
know what's going
always
to happen.
something.
There's always something to do. And it's a
And that
challenge.
either
It's,
kills you or you thrive in it.
yeah, there's a lot of consistency that's required of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a constant process.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Good for you for liking networking. I wish
I
I liked
know.
networking. I don't know what it is. I'm
Mm,
not good at it. I'm
mm.
good at connecting in the moment. The follow through is always my issue. It's where I've always struggled.
We'll
But
talk about that sometime. We'll have an episode on that.
yeah, it sounds good. Networking. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's some get cool guests we can bring on that
Oh,
topic
actually,
too.
I have a good one. I have a good guest.
Awesome. So for anybody listening, we are going to start bringing on guests pretty soon.
Yes.
We're changing up the software a bit to allow for three people, and it's going to be great. I have a couple guests lined
Mm-hmm.
up. I know you have a couple guests lined up, so that's going to be exciting. So I want to ask one last question before we start wrapping up here. What's one thing that's professionally that scared you recently, made you nervous?
I'm nervous all the time.
Are you?
All
You still get the butterflies?
the time.
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, oh, yeah. I I get nervous when I have to like put in a big proposal because I think that even if you're an entrepreneur and even if you've been doing your line of work for as long as I have, there's always this piece of you that's like, am I worth this? You know?
Hmm.
And like I don't like the money side of business. Like I don't like putting a price on myself. So
Yeah.
like that's and as much as people tell you that like you have to, like I honestly would do my job for free and that's not a good idea. I
Mhm.
can't. I don't because it's not a I also have to be a role model to other people and I'm like no, you get paid what you're worth. But when I have to do it, it makes me nervous every time. I have
Yep.
to get that's my thing I have to get over.
It is a tough one. That
I
is a
hate
tough
it.
one. I hate it too.
Maybe
I
everybody hates it. I don't know.
no, 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 no. I have to really put some props to my old business partner is that she never had an issue with it.
Ugh.
Never had a
Can we have
problem.
her on?
Sure, definitely.
Okay.
She had no issue at all just saying, "No, this is I'm spending my time on this. You're going to pay me this much." And
Love
had
it.
no fear in asking for it right up front, which I always felt uncomfortable with. It was always tough for me. And then I got better. And then now that I'm back on my own, it's tough for me too.
Hmm.
When people ask me like, what do you charge? I don't know. What's your budget? Like it's always like this, like I shrink.
Yeah. Mm. If
Okay.
I could, yeah. Anyways, that's it. That's my answer. That's my very
Well,
honest answer.
you asked me before we ended, did I have any final thoughts I wanted to share? So I'm going to throw that question back to you. Any final thoughts you want to share?
Oh man. Um, what do you like? I don't even remember how I asked you. Like just about life or work or I have a lot of thoughts.
I mean, I guess that's whatever comes to mind. I don't even remember what I said.
I don't
Whatever.
know. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Knows an answer too.
No.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, that was great. Honestly, I feel like I learned a lot about where you came from, how you got here. Um, I don't know. I can see why your company's called Insight because I feel like that was a very insightful process of understanding where you came from. And you've done a lot of great work of carrying each lesson with you throughout life, whether you meant to or not, I don't know. But it just seems like you've been really successful in that endeavor of taking everything and observing all the dynamics and then also seeking further education and carrying that all with you into who you are today. And that's something I really appreciate about you. And I appreciate that about your story.
Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate it. And Actually, that the name and like insights is like a really redundant name, but I love insights because like when you have that moment where you have that flash of insight, that's what creates long-term memory. And when you have long-term memory, that's the only way you can get to behavior change. So I love that sequence of like learning and human behavior and like that insights piece gets missed a lot when it comes to like education and leadership, in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah,
So it's a
I agree.
cheesy name, but there's a lot of thought behind it.
Yeah, I totally get it. I love it.
Yeah.
One of the first courses they had us take in the doctorate program was called Use of Self, and it was all about constantly checking in with
Mm,
yourself and what you're learning and where you're at and why am I feeling this way? What's that emotion mean? What does this mean? What does that mean? It's just so much of that. So it's so important.
yeah.
Well, everybody, it's
See
another
you
episode.
later.
That's another episode of the Workplace Wanderer. If you enjoyed the episode, if you're listening, 5 stars. If you're watching on YouTube, which I hope you are, like, subscribe, comment. Let Kara know one thing that you learned from her story today in the comment section. And thank you, everybody. Appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody.